Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. Every touch is a step forward. By Dexcom, take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom. And by Real Good Foods, real food you feel good about eating.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, Ask the D-Moms Back to School Edition. We talk about tech in school, schedules, 504s, and when your kid only has 20 minutes for lunch.
Going to school is about learning life skills. And one of the life skills you need as you get older is to be efficient in your lunch breaks and your work breaks and things like that. And at a certain point, kids just have to learn that they have a certain amount of time to eat. And so I guess if you're a child with diabetes, it's very different for us, right?
Moira McCarthy and I will talk about how to handle that difference and a lot more about type 1 in school. Plus, tell me something good with a big brother who steps up and a pageant appearance that makes a difference. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of Diabetes Connections. I'm your host, Stacey Sims. We aim to educate and inspire by sharing stories of connection. My son, Benny, was diagnosed with type 1 right before he turned 2 back in 2006. So it's almost 13 years of type 1 diabetes for us. And, before we jump into the back to school stuff and the chat with Moira that I love doing every month, I want to share something that happened in a Facebook group last week that I thought might be helpful. This gentleman posted, it was a group about the tandem pump, and he posted, did you know you can get your blood glucose value from the Dexcom right on your tandem pump without using your phone? This is a feature that's been around for a while. And so, a couple of people said, yep, you can definitely do that. Yep, absolutely. And I wrote out, this is said kindly. If you don't know that this feature exists, you might want to go back and read the manual. You want to use your insulin pump to the fullest, so make sure you have the best information. And I felt bad about writing it because I didn't want it to come off like, if you don't know this, you're an idiot, right? I was kind of cognizant of the fact that I should write out said kindly. But I have seen this happen quite often. And my advice, because this is what happened to us. We went to the pump class. I mean, this is years and years ago. The pump class we took was when Benny was 2.5. We had just gotten the Animas 2020 was the first insulin pump we were going to use. And we sat in that class for 4, 5, 6 hours. Who the heck knows? Learned all about the pump. Worked fine. 3 days later, went to change the inset and couldn't remember how. And I had to pull up a video, and this was 2007. So there weren't a whole bunch of YouTubers talking about diabetes. The only video I could find was in French, but it did show me how to do it, and we made it. So the guy, exactly as I expected, he came back and said, I just took a class. I can't even remember half the stuff they talked about. And I shared the story I just shared with you. And I said, look, what I tell everybody now is use your pump for a month, for 2 months, until you feel comfortable with the basics, and then go back and read the manual. Or then go back, and if your insurance covers it, meet with your educator again. And that's when you'll really learn all of the features, because it's just like drinking from a fire hose, right? There's too much information in the beginning. So if you're not exactly sure how to use the pump, or you're not exactly sure the features of the CGM you have, that kind of thing, please go back and read the manual. We all love info from the Facebook groups, right? That's really quick and dirty. Just, hey, what's up with this? But, you can't always trust that. And your situation may be different. I know the book is boring, and maybe there are some manufacturer videos you can watch to make it easier. But it's just a thought. If you have a couple minutes here and there, it really can help you get the most out of your technology. I'm just glad that he didn't get mad at me for suggesting such a thing. I'm just glad that he understood my tone and didn't get mad at me. Okay, a quick reminder before we get to my chat with Moira. I mentioned my son was diagnosed at 2. He is now 14. He's a freshman in high school. Moira's daughter, Lauren, was diagnosed just as kindergarten started for her, but she's now 29. She just turned 29, so happy birthday, Lauren. And she is, a successful adult living independently. All good things you should know as you listen to me and Moira answer listener questions about back to school and diabetes. Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. Handwriting your blood glucose levels is the ultimate throwback. The One Touch VarioFlex meter seamlessly syncs with the free One Touch Reveal mobile app to create your dynamic electronic logbook. And when you choose the One Touch Reveal mobile app, you'll be joining thousands of other people living with diabetes. In fact, as of this past October, One Touch Reveal was the #1 downloaded diabetes management app in the US, Canada, France, and the UK. To upgrade today to the One Touch VarioFlex meter and One Touch Reveal mobile app, visit diabetes-connections.com and click on the One Touch logo. Hey, Moira. At this point, we're officially end of summer. Happy end of summer.
I know, I'm so sad. I mean, I love September and I love the fall, and of course skiing's my favorite thing in the world, but I'm always sad when Labor Day comes because everything changes.
You don't have,
it's okay.
Your granddaughter's not in preschool yet, is she? Like, this is not a back to school for her, right? She's little.
Well, I don't know if you know that babies don't go to daycares anymore. Babies go to schools.
Yeah, that's right.
So my soon-to-be 7-month-old granddaughter, Lucy, goes to school with her 2-year-old sister, Molly.
Oh, I love it.
But no, I am completely empty nest. I have put both my kids all the way through school. They're grown-ups. They pay their own bills. All I have to do is feed the cat and my husband and myself.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, we wanted to talk back to school because at this point, as we're taping right at Labor Day, most of the Northeast schools are going back this week. Much of the rest of the country has been back. We thought this was a good time to kind of get your questions as your child has started school and you're seeing what's going on with diabetes. So we've got a bunch to get through, Maura. Why don't we jump right in?
I think we should.
Yeah. And let's talk about my favorite subject, which is food. We got 2 questions. We actually got a bunch of questions, but I'm going to boil them into these 2, which is...
that was a good pun since it's about food.
There you go. That's about the best cooking I can do. So one mom says, my kid barely has time to eat, and this is during lunch, and man, that is an issue. And then the other is, my child is a picky eater, and I cannot feed him breakfast. He doesn't want to eat anything. So let's start with the breakfast. Because that's a huge topic with or without diabetes. What did Lauren do? Well, Lauren had no choice, right? Because you were on you had to eat regimen.
Only when she was really little. She went on a pump at a pretty young age. So we did have a lot of flexibility from 2nd grade on. It was never really a problem with her, but I do have a lot of friends without kids with diabetes who it was a problem. And I would say that if you know how to adjust a basal and if the basals are on track, then it's the same issue as without diabetes. Yeah. If you're on NPH and regular, then there's no option. You've got to eat a meal at certain times during the day. But I'm just going to make the assumption that the person who sent this question in, child is either on, a steady long acting and rapid insulin or a pump, because almost everyone is, right? So what I would say is, it's really important from what I learned in raising my children for kids to have fuel. And you've got to find a way for them to have some kind of decent fuel in the morning. So what about the idea of making an exciting trip to Trader Joe's or some supermarket they don't usually go to and kind of search for some new and exciting things that might be interesting to them. Mm-hmm. And maybe if they feel like they pick it out, they'll try it. I don't know. What do you think?
This is one that I always say to diabetes parents who talk to me like you. It drives me crazy as a parent, but not as a diabetes parent. Neither one of my kids ever wanted to eat breakfast. And it was something that when they had more time in the morning, I could usually get them to eat something, because I agree. So many studies show that if you eat breakfast, any breakfast, I've seen studies that show if you eat a junky breakfast, it's better than no breakfast, which is debatable, I think. But it does say that it's better to eat in the morning. So we have a problem right now where Benny's bus comes at 6:25, which is early, right? And school starts at 7:15. He's much more of a morning person than my daughter is, so that's lucky. And he's up and he's out, and it hasn't been an issue. But what I've said to him is, can you eat something? Can you just please take something with you? Can you eat on the way to the bus stop? And he hasn't wanted to. But I've put a granola bar, a Kind bar, or whatever bar. We've thrown that into the bag. And after the 2nd day, he did tell me that in between classes, he got, he did eat it. So I'm good with that. It's just tough, but it's not really diabetes wise. And
that might be harder with a little kid, right?
Oh, yeah.
I will tell you, a couple thoughts pop into my head. The first one is for the mom who asked the question, any other parents who are having that problem. What we know as breakfast food does not have to be what they eat for breakfast. Like if they really like grilled cheese sandwiches and they'll eat a half a grilled cheese sandwich every morning, then let them have that for their breakfast. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Eat anything you want.
It's fine.
Have some meatloaf.
Honestly, I mean, different parts of the world eat completely different. So, and the second thing is I'm thinking of myself personally, and I do not like to eat food in the morning. I usually hold off until about 9 a.m. I'm self-employed, so I can control my schedule. And I usually hold off till about 9 a.m. to eat breakfast. But when I'm running in a road race or something, I know that I need the fuel. And so I've found different like granola bite type things. I really like the Fiber One protein bars that have a ton of protein and not too many calories for me. For a kid, that wouldn't matter. And just the right amount of carbs. And so I could just sort of wolf it down and I don't really feel like I'm eating. So maybe they can just explore different ideas like that. And if the child's old enough, I think your idea with Benny is great. That's what would work for me. Throw something in my bag and, between classes a couple hours later, I'll eat it. Probably not easy to do with a little kid.
Yeah. And I will also add, for all of you moms and dads who feel really guilty about this, and I'll put myself in this camp because over the years I have tried all of those recipes you see in Facebook groups for the low carb muffins, for the little egg muffins, right? That you make the eggs the night before in the muffin tins with all the yummy ingredients in them, and you try really hard. And my kids don't like any of it.
Just pour the Cheerios in the bowl.
I end up eating it.
That's what I say.
Exactly. It's just, if it's not going to happen in your house, get rid of the guilt and give them like a piece of meatloaf or a piece of pizza and move on.
And maybe this little kid who won't eat breakfast is just brilliant and thought of intermittent fasting before the diet world did. And could they copyrighted it? Could be a millionaire.
Well, and the real question is it detrimental to them in the short run right there? In other words, is the little kid who really doesn't want breakfast going to school and having issues, right? Is it really impacting not just blood sugar, because you can adjust basal, as you mentioned, usually for that, but is it affecting their thinking, their participation in school? Are they so hungry by the time they get to lunch that they can't concentrate? That's when you really need to address it. But if it's not... And I think, what we're talking under the age of 8, 9, every kid is different. But, if it's not affecting them, then again, it's, as I said, it's just driving me crazy that my kid won't eat. Yeah. So you have to look at it case by case. And let's talk about the timing, because in some elementary schools, and I know in a lot of high schools, the kids have 20 minutes to eat, which...
and lunch is at like 10 a.m. Yeah. It's super important for kids to get to the cafeteria at the same time as everyone else and sit down when everyone else sits down. Like I can't even believe how important it was to both my girls growing up that they not be late to lunch. I don't know. The world ends if you're not in the cafeteria when everyone else says there's something. And that's important because we're not just treating kids with diabetes. We're raising human beings. And so one of the things we thought about with the short lunch time and with Lauren wanting the ability to walk in at the same time as her friends was checking a little ahead of time. When she was very small and she had to go to the nurse to check before lunch, the teacher would send her down 15 minutes before. And then she would come back to the classroom and go to lunch with everyone else. And then when she was a little older and she was responsible enough, she would just text me her number before lunchtime. And if it was a situation where she had to see the nurse, I would say, I'm really sorry, but you have to today. But most of the time she didn't. So that got her there on time. And even though it was a short lunch, she had the same short lunch as everyone else.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so important because it's such a social time for them. And I know, we dosed after lunch until probably 4th or 5th grade, which I know a lot of parents don't want to do now, and that's okay. But you have to do it, like you said, to try to accommodate them the best you can. So Benny never went to the nurse. He did everything in the classroom unless there was an issue. So he was able to always, like Lauren, check a little early. And then he would dose in the cafeteria with supervision until about 3rd or 4th grade. And then he could just say, yeah, I did it. But we were very fortunate that they accommodated us like that. But it was so hard for a lot of kids. I know my kids did not have this issue because they prioritized eating over talking. I mean, especially Benny is not going to let his lunch go unfinished. But I know a lot of kids get really distracted and don't have enough time to eat. What do you do when your 8-year-old is trying to talk with their friends and they look up and lunch is over and they still have a half a sandwich and an apple? right back to me and Maura. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. Do you know about Dexcom Clarity? This is their diabetes management software, and for a long time, I thought it was just something our endo used. But you can use it both on the desktop or as an app on your phone, and it's an easy way to keep track of the big picture. I check it about once a week. I checked it just before taping the show because I was curious how the first week of school had gone, and it really helps us dial back and see longer-term trends, and helps me not overreact to just happened for one day or even just 1 hour. The overlay reports help put context to Benny's glucose levels and patterns. And you can even share the reports with your care team, which makes appointments a lot more productive. Managing diabetes is not easy, but I feel like we have one of the best CGM systems working for us. Find out more at diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo.
Well, so first of all, I will admit that we sometimes dosed after lunch too. And sometimes we would dose a half dose before lunch.
Yeah, that's how
and
we
then
transitioned.
Figure out what you needed after. But to that topic, I would say going to school is about learning life skills. And one of the life skills you need as you get older is to be efficient in your lunch breaks and your work breaks and things like that. And at a certain point, kids just have to learn that they have a certain amount of time to eat. And so I guess if you're a child with diabetes, it's very different for us, right? Than if you have a child who tends to not finish their lunch and you want them to be able to go on with their school day, then your best bet is going to be bolusing after lunch. And we used to get those little, those little multicolored round stickers that are on like yard sale things.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
We used to get those, and I would put a sticker on each lunch item when she brought lunch and write the carb count on it. And then she would peel them off as she ate what she ate. And then she could show that to the nurse or whoever or call me, and she would know how many carbs she had eaten.
Nice. Very smart.
Yeah.
Very efficient.
Yeah. Sometimes I get it right. So I don't know if that sounds mean, but if everybody has a 20-minute lunch, then you've got to learn how to eat your lunch in the 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I think it goes to that newer trend that we've talked about so many times of pre-bolusing because you see the spike on the Dexcom. And, you really have to figure out this trade-off of learning the life skill, not freaking out as a parent, not making your child more anxious, and saying perhaps, okay, you've got this much time to eat. What did you eat in that time? And dosing for that. Until they just get the rhythm and they get a little older, and you can. To me, I know I'm on this soapbox, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but I just think you're doing your 6, 7, 8-year-old a disservice if you're demanding that they eat because you want to see a straighter line after lunch. It just is. It can't be good for them.
Well, I'm going to guess that if you sat down in an endocrinology appointment and talked about this with your younger child, they would probably say the same thing that you just said. And then it wouldn't be just another parent who you're like, how could they do that? It would be your medical team saying, we're looking at your child's whole picture.
Yeah.
And right now, we don't care about these spikes. When they get a little older and they can be more responsible, we will care about them more then. But right now, let's just get through this and help them keep continuing in their happy school experience and fitting lunch in. That's just my guess.
Yeah, I just, because I have visions of this 6-year-old with their cute little lunchbox. Suddenly, they're 17 years old and they're still freaking out over lunch because there was so much stress involved at that young age. Yeah. I just get nervous. Okay, so here was an interesting question about 504 plans. And of course, if you're not familiar, 504 is the section of a federal law that protects children and people with disabilities. But when we say 504, it usually means just the plan that you write out with your school. So Meredith wanted to know advice for parents whose kids are aging into a different school system, elementary to middle to high school. When you have a 504 plan you're used to, but then suddenly things have changed and get more strict because your child is older. Now, as I read this, I'm not quite sure of the strict part, but maybe we can talk about how things change, Maura?
Yeah, so, as I've said, Lauren was diagnosed with type 1 at the very beginning of kindergarten, and now she's 28 years old. So she has had type 1 through elementary, middle, high school, college, and beyond. And I will say that for me and for Lauren, as she grew older, things got looser. In the first place, she wasn't that interested in having accommodations when she was in high school. And I felt like that was her right. Now, there were a few things that we had to have. There was no share then, but she used to text me numbers. So she had to have access to her cell phone. However, the rule of the school, which I fully supported, was if she used her phone for anything else, she would be banned from using her phone for a period of time. And she got caught using it for something else and got banned. And I didn't say it's a medical device. No, it helped us, but she blew it for us. Right. And she had to face the consequences. So I wish I knew some of the details of what the parent was finding as different. And I'm a little confused because you should have a meeting and you go in and discuss and you control what's on your child's 504. The school doesn't give you a 504. You give them a 504 and then you work it out together.
Yeah,
at least that was my experience.
That is a great point. Our district, I have found over the years, is just a little different in that we have two plans. The district gives us a diabetes management, I think it's called a diabetes medical management plan. And that is the form that I take to my endocrinologist and we say, can he manage independently? What does he do if this happens? What are especially as a little kid, what are the ranges that we need to treat? When are we going to check? That kind of stuff. So that's the diabetes plan for the medical part of it, and it says in there the child can go to the bathroom. It says all the diabetes stuff you'd want it to say. And my district, which is a very large public district in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, has one plan for kids on multiple daily injections and one form for kids on pumps. It's really interesting. This year, for the first time, there is a spot that the endocrinologist can check that says you can treat off the Dexcom G6. FDA approved, and you can treat off it. That the doctor can check so that the school nurse doesn't have to make the kid prick their finger if the parents and the endo agree. And it's amazing to see it change and progress. But then in addition to that, we do the 504, which is only for testing in our district. And I tell the story a lot, but when Benny went to kindergarten, I didn't know really. We were the first kids with type 1 in this elementary school in a long time and the only kids at the time. And I wrote out a 504 that must have been 8 pages. He can do this and don't make him do that and testing for this. I'm in kindergarten. And they said, oh, thank you very much. And I think they put it in a drawer. I think I confused them because I had the diabetes plan. In 3rd grade, they called me and said, testing is beginning. We need to make your 504. And I said, well, I have one. They said, oh, no, that's not the real one. We only do it for testing. We knew we were, it was just kind of funny. So for testing, you sit with them and it's just what kind of accommodations do you need? And as you said, over time, it's actually kind of loosened up because we learned what we really needed and what we didn't need. And at this point, Benny's accommodations really only include he gets to keep his phone with him in school unless he's goofing around with it. He wears an Apple Watch now, unless he's goofing around with it. And during testing, he's allowed to bring the cell phone in and put it on the table where the teacher or the proctor, for those standardized tests and all that. And that's it. Mm-hmm. But I think if your 504 plan is something that includes every little thing, like going to the bathroom, or, here's the plan for the substitute, or here's the plan if my child is low or high or needs to contact me, which some smaller school districts, or frankly, some school districts that are kind of out of touch, you have to do all that. If you're not happy with the 504 plan, or they're not listening to you, I would go right to, not to fight or scream or yell, but I would go right to the American Diabetes Association Safe at School website. Scan that, look at the 504s they have there. If yours seems really different, it might be worth a phone call to the people at the American Diabetes Association. They're really good at the Safe at School stuff and helping out, and they may be able to tell you if you have a real problem or if what you're asking for is something that you guys might want to think through a little bit more. Does that sound right?
Yes. And I think that's a great idea of having them. When you were saying that, my heart was starting to beat because I thought you were going to say, get an advocate and get a lawyer. So there are definitely times that people need to do that.
Yes, of course.
But I think they are actually quite rare. And what I found over the years was that I treated it like a sales call. Like I went in to win them over.
That's perfect.
And to make them feel like we were all going to be on the same team together. And I sold this thing, and that kind of worked out. We had bumps along the way and things I didn't like and didn't agree with. But overall, everyone was on the same page and wanting to make Lauren feel as comfortable as she could with diabetes in school. And that's the goal. And And I do see some people talking about what they want for accommodations now and think, you might be asking a little too much. And every case is unique. So there probably are cases of children who need extra accommodations. But overall, just your general run-of-the-mill kid with diabetes, I think we have to be careful when we figure out what we need the school to do, that we really only ask them what we need. Does that make sense?
I absolutely agree with that.
But my older daughter, the one without diabetes, teaches first grade, and she has a really hard time envisioning when and if she has a child with diabetes in her classroom, if she would ever be able to personally watch the Dexcom share, because she's got so many children with so many things going on that she's responsible for. That's an awful lot to ask a teacher. Well, and sometimes I see parents getting upset because the teachers aren't going to follow, although I guess with an older age kid, that wouldn't be the case because they'd be moving around from classroom to classroom. But I think I'm saying the same thing you're saying, in that make sure that that your child really needs everything that you're asking for.
Well, let's talk about that, because we had a discussion in my local group, and I don't have a question to ask you. I don't have like a name of a mom to share, but I wanted to bring up the discussion. This is a perfect time. The question was, child diagnosed over the summer, has a Dexcom. Here in Charlotte, North Carolina, there is a pilot program. When you're diagnosed, they put a CGM on you and send you home. So we get some very interesting, we've talked about that, and that's probably a topic for another time. But young child, I want to say, elementary school age, let's say second grade, I can't remember, but it's not older than fourth grade, wondering, do I give the school staff the follow power? Do I share with school staff immediately out of the gate? Or do I go to school and see what happens? This is a parent that's really trying to think this through. And it was a great discussion in my local group. So not surprisingly, I said wait, because we never shared with school staff. Benny did not get share until fifth grade, which, as you listen, isn't this crazy? Dexcom share has only been around for, I want to say, 4 years.
I know.
It seems like it's been, around forever.
I know. And I think it's super cool and awesome, but that's why I just want to shake people and say, yes, this is a great tool, but we were okay before too. Are we better now? Yes. But it wasn't like we went from the Flintstones to the Jetsons. Right?
That's hysterical. But right.
It's true.
But here's what may happen if you share too early. All right, so maybe, like me, you hit the jackpot and your child's school nurse in fourth and fifth grade is a woman who has type 1 diabetes and gets it. She doesn't overreact. She doesn't underreact. She doesn't let the kids get away with any BS, but she doesn't she doesn't hover. Or you get a nurse who is very nervous, or staff who's very nervous if you don't have a nurse, and for every alarm, they pull your child out of class. And this happens all the time.
So I would lean toward what you're saying, and I would suggest that this might be a good exercise for the parent too. And of course, this is something that you need to discuss with your medical team. But you could even say, we're going to set the alarms like super wide, right? So the low is really where we want them treated, and the high is just like, crazy high, because you can fix a high. And we're not going to have the school know in between. And why don't you not look at it until it's time to look at it too? I'm guessing most parents wouldn't be able to handle that, because I know from when my daughter, who's an adult, has share, sometimes I just want to look at it, right? You just want to look at it. And with an adult, I can stop myself from reacting, but that's hard. But it might be a good exercise for the parent to say, I'm going to use this technology still, but I'm going to use it in a less aggressive way when they start school. And I'm not going to worry about what their blood sugars are after they get on the bus until a half an hour before lunchtime.
Yeah. Well,
and then I'll look at it then.
I think
at the same time that the school's looking at it.
I think we did.
Just a thought.
I think we did pretty much exactly as you suggest here, the year or two before we had share. And it worked out so well. And here's what we did. So Benny had the receiver. So he wasn't doing any finger sticks at school. And at that time, you calibrated twice a day, so once in the morning, once at night at home. And we had no share, so I saw nothing. But there were times of the day we would set the alarms exactly. So the low was, I think, 90 where I wanted him to treat at that point. And I think we turned off the high, or we made it 350. But there were certain times of day where previously he had checked his blood sugar by pricking a finger. He would look at the Dexcom. So he looked at it at arrival at school, 10 a.m., lunch, and 20 minutes before a bus. And of course, an adult had to look at it with him because he was a little kid, and, not that he wouldn't, it was the trust but verify age. And then it worked out great because you're still getting a number. You're not ignoring it, but it's not alarming all day long either. It hits 180 in alarms, and then the stupid thing's not going to shut off for an hour. That kid now never wants to use a Dexcom again.
Absolutely. I think that sounds like a smart plan. I would add, this shows how different. Oh, wait, first I have to say, when you first said, once we had share, it's like, how did Sunny feel like about you taking share? For some reason, I was thinking CHER. Anyway, so this shows how different two people are with diabetes. If I set Lauren's low at 90, she would be alarming all day because her range was 70 and higher.
Ah.
So for her, if there was share back then or Dexcom back then, I probably would have had her set her alarm at like 65. Her endocrinologist would have ripped their hair out, but I know her and I know how her diabetes is in her. The idea of alarms, it didn't dawn on me because Lauren's older now. And I just thought about it the other day at how annoying it must be for the kids when they're in school, when the alarms go off.
Oh, it's a big problem. And I've talked to a lot of parents why is my child turning the alarm off? They know how to do it. They're not dummies, or why
so
is this,
I would say let them
turn
it off.
Oh,
unless your child has true hypoglycemic unawareness, which like maybe 2 out of every 200,000 children actually do. And if your child's having trouble recognizing lows, that's something that you need to talk to the medical team about, and they can give you tools to help them recognize it. But other than that, if it's an important school day and they really don't want to be distracted, I don't know. Since I come from having raised a child before it doesn't worry me to have the idea of turning it off for a few hours.
I would say as you're listening, and if your child has been diagnosed more recently, like the people in my town who get the CGM before they leave the hospital, and you think there's no way I can do any of this, just try for a week to nudge that high up. And it doesn't mean your child's not looking at the numbers. It doesn't mean that their caregivers at school aren't looking at the numbers. But it may mean that the alarms are going off less. And I think that
try for 2 weeks.
Try that more. You always want more. You always want more.
No. I'm just thinking of the parents and how hard it's going to be for them. And in any change of habit, including addiction, which I think looking at a CGM is almost an addiction in a way. It's a good addiction, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in terms of breaking habits, you need at least 2 weeks to break any kind of habit. And so you got to kind of just see your way through it. And again, I don't know if these endocrinologists are giving them the CGM right out of the hospital, but maybe if you talk to your endocrinology team and say, I don't want the alarms to be as invasive during the school day, what can we do? They'll give you similar suggestions. I just want those parents who are listening now, who do have little kids who are just diagnosed, who have them on the CGM, who truly believe that if that technology was taken away, that there would be a crisis every minute and their child would be rushed to the hospital and they would be sick all the time. That is not the case. You can definitely manage the disease easier using it. But if you cut back a little or you're not on top of it all the time, it will be okay.
Well, and also, is there a worse time for volatile blood sugars than the beginning of the school year?
Well, that's the thing.
Oh.
I want to mention, too, that my daughter took 40 to 50% more insulin during the school year than she did in the summer.
That's right. We've talked about that. You're an outlier.
And once we knew that, we knew, well, it's because our summers are so active.
Right.
Once we knew that, it wasn't a big deal. But the first couple of years of her diabetes, the first few weeks were bumpy. And again, that was before share. And I don't think it would be any less bumpy with share. I think you just kind of got to go through and figure out what their needs are and watch the patterns for a few days and then make the changes.
Right. And you can do that with a CGM, whether you're sharing or not. The CGM makes trends much easier to spot. We're not, listen carefully. We're differentiating between a couple of things here. But just to reiterate, the beginning of the school year is always a time when Benny has more weird lows, more weird highs. I mean, he's starting a new sport this week. I don't even know what's going to happen with this kid. I mean, God forbid he plays a sport more than 1 or 2 seasons. He's always changing, just so we have it figured out.
But Stacey, I think about all these questions, and I remember going through those years with Lauren and, packing the low kits and bringing the medication to school and worrying about if the new nurse, when she transitioned to the middle school or whatever, was going to do it. But then I look back and I'm really pleased that my first goal every day of Lauren's school life, of course, blood sugar was a goal, but my first goal was for her to have a happy, successful day of learning. And I look at her now at 28 with a great career and great health insurance and a very healthy person. And I think that's why I'm so confident saying to parents, it's all a balance. It's not all about a straight line. There will come a time in their life when they want to try for a straight line all the time. And there will be times in your life when you can do it. There'll be times when you can't. And that's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
I will also say one of the things that has been hard and that has gotten better over time, and I will credit the CGM for this, we'll give some good news here, is Benny needs sleep. I mean, everybody needs sleep, right? But he used to get migraines and headaches when he didn't get enough sleep, especially. And he has learned over the years, this is a kid who's now a freshman in high school, wants to be good at sports, wants to do well in school. And it's been wild to see him as a younger kid, I don't want to go to sleep, to, hey, Mom, how much sleep do you think I need? Mm-hmm. And so, and what time should I go to bed? And he's not perfect. He's still, can I have 1 more minute on my phone, blah, blah. But to see him kind of growing up and thinking about these things is really interesting. So to hear you talk about Lauren, I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, we have 4 more years of high school with this guy. My daughter's already in college. It's just amazing to see how it's changed and how much I know it's going to. So I guess the long-winded I'm trying to say is I really hope I can continue to be like that. I mean, you're my goal, right? To try to say it's not all about...
we got to get you better goals. But, just keep in mind, and actually what you said about sleep is so true, because let's not forget that when Lauren was 16 and 17, she did not take good care of her diabetes. And now, as an adult taking good care of it, the most remarkable thing for her is how well she sleeps.
Oh, that's great.
Now, I don't want parents to think if their kids are over 180, they're not going to be able to sleep every night.
Oh, yeah.
I don't share her numbers, but it was a whole different story than that. But I think it's great. And look at you and Benny are growing together, not just as a diabetes parent and a kid with diabetes, but as a family and as people. That's what we care about, right?
Oh,
that's what we care about.
We try and get emotional, as always. All right, before we close it out here, you've got a really big trip coming up. When is Ireland?
Oh, I'm so excited. On October 19th, a huge conference in Dublin called Thrive-A-Beaties. I am doing a big talk at that, and I spoke at this 1.5 years ago, and it was an amazing experience. I learned so much from it, and I'm really excited to go back and find out what's new in, Ireland and European countries and connect with the patients and the parents again, and it's just going to be awesome. So come out, check it out on thriveatbeaties.eu, I think it is.
I'll link it up.
How they do? No, IE, something like that.
I'll link it up. You just go to the show notes for this episode, and we'll link it up. That is so exciting. That's going to be cool. And I'm speaking at Falls Church, Virginia.
Oh,
just
very
the same
good.
thing as Ireland.
At the Friends for Life.
Yeah, that's going to be really
excellent.
fun. I love that one. And I have relatives in the area, so I try to go every year if I can. And that's going to be a really fun one. So I look forward to that. And if you have any questions, we will be back in October with another Ask the D-Mom segment for you. Maybe we can tell some Halloween stories.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
There's lots of good Halloween stuff.
Yeah, if you've got questions about how to handle the holiday or any more, even if they're back to school questions, even by October they won't be back to school, but if you've got school issues, we are happy to do our best to answer them. And we're always great to spend some time with you. Thank you so much.
You too. We'll talk soon.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
Ooh, I like that idea about Halloween questions. That's always so difficult. You know, it's actually, I'll tell you what, spoiler alert, I don't think it's as difficult as we all thought it was going to be. My experience was that I was in complete panic for the first Halloween, which was almost a year after Benny was diagnosed. He was diagnosed right after Thanksgiving. So we had a year to get used to diabetes. And I was freaking out, thinking like, oh no, what's he going to do? And how are we going to get through this? And we'll answer those questions next month. I mean, I won't make you wait. The first year, I realized that he was 3 years old and I could just say to him, here, you can have 2 pieces of candy right now, and then we'll save the rest and have them with our dessert. And when he was that little, and he has an older sister, we only had dessert 3 days a week in our house. So it was like, here's the Halloween candy for dessert tonight. And then the rest of it just mysteriously kind of disappeared over time. So I'll talk more about what we did in the next couple of years because I tried lots of different things. But give me your questions about Halloween. Maura and I will definitely tackle them. I think that's going to be a lot of fun because it's not just the candy, right? It's the whole trick-or-treating and the exercise and the parties at school and the candy that never ends then, right? It's like from Halloween to winter break, there's candy every day sometimes. All right, that's for next month. Get us your questions, and maybe we'll do something fun in the Facebook group with that, too. I have some ideas. I'm thinking costumes. All right, time for Tell Me Something Good. One of the things I haven't talked about yet with Real Good Foods is the nutritional content. We love them. I mean, they're easy. They taste good, super convenient. You can buy them right in the grocery store. They're low carb. And they, as I said, the most important thing for us is, do they taste good? But they are so much better than the alternatives. And they have a page on their website that compares them to other products. It is unbelievable. You know, you forget what's in some of these other things. So the Real Good Food breakfast sandwich is 6 grams of carb and 18 grams of protein. And then the other breakfast biscuit that's right next to it in the freezer, 26 grams of carbs and only 12 grams of protein. And if you look at the ingredients, the other one's a little bit scary. There are a lot of artificial stuff in it. And then the cauliflower pizza, and there are some other cauliflower pizzas on the market, but the Real Good one, 9 grams of carbs versus 37 grams of carbs in another product, 20 grams of protein in Real Good Food, and 12 grams of protein in the other cauliflower crust pizza. All you have to do is look at the back. I mean, we do that right anyway. I can't remember when I used to grocery store shop once upon a time and not look at every single label to look for the carb and protein and fat count. And they make it easy by making products that taste terrific, are good for you, are easy to make, and are low in carb, high in protein. Find out more. You can go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Real Good Foods logo. Some great Tell Me Something Good kid stuff to share with you this week. Kayla wrote on Facebook, I wanted to share my proud mom moment. My 10-year-old non-type 1 son asked my type 1 daughter's doctor to take a class because he wants to help care for her more. I'm a single mom. We went today to the class. He did so good. He was super pumped to learn more about what it is she has and how to properly care for her. So tonight he decided he wanted to give her the Lantus shot. She was so happy her big brother was doing it, and apparently it doesn't hurt when he does it. Mommy always makes it hurt, she writes. It's times like these that make me feel like I'm not totally failing at this. On a side note, he wants to be a research doctor to find a cure for type 1, and he participated in the TrialNet studies just 6 weeks ago. He hates needles. I'm super proud of this kid for stepping up and wanting to be the best that he can be. Kayla, this is phenomenal. What a wonderful story. I'm the only thing, I almost didn't read it when you said it makes me feel like I'm not totally failing at this. Come on. You are doing an amazing job. Your daughter is happy and looks fantastic in this photo. Your son wants to take care of her. How can you not be a fantastic mom? You're not failing at anything. And these are young kids. 10-year-old son, 10 years old, she said, and younger sister. This is fantastic. Kayla, be proud. And thanks for letting us help celebrate this great success. Another Tell Me Something Good this week comes from Tracy. And she says, my type 1 daughter competed in the USA Ambassador National Pageant in Florida, representing Central Carolina. Yeah, this is my neck of the woods. She did well in the pageant, but also, maybe better, she managed her T1D like a rock star. Moira didn't make the top 5, but she received the non-finalist interview award for high score, won the spokesmodel optional event, and was first runner-up in Glamour Photogenic. And that spokesmodel event was a 90-second onstage monologue commercial selling North Carolina as a travel destination. That is fantastic. It was a ton of preparation, Tracy writes, but we figured out what her, quote, magic number range for blood glucose in competition is. So in Florida, she was very diligent and would make adjustments, but not overcorrect anything. She was very focused on her health and didn't want diabetes to be the variable that impacted her performance negatively. In the pictures that she sent, you can see that she is carrying a Rufus bear, the bear with diabetes that you get from JDRF. And Tracy says, thanks for my mom brag moment. Tracy, thanks so much for sending that in. Congratulations. And I'd love to hear more about her commercial for North Carolina as a tourist destination, because I know we got it all. We got the beach, we got the mountains, we've got NASCAR, we've got wine country. You all need to come down here. If you have a Tell Me Something Good story, you can pop it into the Facebook group. It is Diabetes Connections, the group. You can always email me, Stacey at diabetes-connections.com, or message me over social media. There is a Diabetes Connections account on Facebook and Twitter, and Stacey Sims on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, just the one account on Instagram. But please reach out and tell me something good. Quick personal update. I mentioned that Benny was starting wrestling, and as I'm taping this, he's only had a couple of practices, and he's loving it. He says it's really hard, but really fun. And we're already figuring out how to handle this because it's different, right? Every sport is so different. So I just want to tell you what happened the first practice. The season doesn't actually start until November. So these are preconditioning workouts and frankly, teaching wrestling to the kids like Benny who've never done it before. So it's 4 days a week practice. But one day is a double practice. So it's 4 days a week, 1 hour. And then the double practice, they do weights and then they do mats. And of course, the very first practice had to be the day that it was double. So he went and did the weights. And of course, his blood sugar went up just a little bit because that's usually what happens for most people when they do any kind of weight-bearing exercise. And we definitely overtreated. And we knew it. We knew this was a danger, but we still overtreated. He came home. He had, it's a very weird schedule. He had 2 hours in between the weights and the mats. And that's only that one day a week that they do this. But he, of course, was starving and he treated. And by the time he got to the mats portion of the practice, he walked into the gym and was 220 double arrows down. So, I'm not staying for wrestling practice. It's high school and he knows what to do. But I really, even after all this time, it's tough for me to sit in that car and drive away when it's anything double arrows down. But I trust and I'm close enough and I left. And, sure enough, he went all the way down to, I think he went down to 65. The double arrows had stopped by then. When I picked him up, we talked about it and he said, yeah, I couldn't even do the first half hour of practice. I mean, as soon as he saw the double arrows, he took himself out. He went and treated and kind of waited and watched. But it needed to slow down and stop before he could go back in. So we're adjusting and we're learning. And it's amazing though, isn't it? Even after all, you know what's going to happen, but it's hard, right? We knew what to do and we still kind of overreacted and we're still learning. And look, I'll keep you posted. I think he's going to be just fine. But every new experience with diabetes just takes time to figure it out. And in the meantime, I will restock all of the low snacks in his bag because he went through every single one of them. In the meantime, where am I going to be? I am traveling a lot these days. Next week, not this coming weekend, but September 20th, I am going to Houston for the JDRF Type 1 Nation Summit there. First weekend in October, I will be at Friends for Life in Falls Church. Then I'm going to a podcasting conference, not specific to diabetes, but just a conference for women podcasters in mid-October. We have our local JDRF Gala at the end of October, and then we have Take Control of Your Diabetes here in Charlotte for the first time, the first weekend in November. A lot going on. I'm actually booking into 2020, which is going to be a lot of fun. I'm doing a book tour. I've got The World's Worst Diabetes Mom coming out. Oh my gosh, we're getting closer. If you're in the Facebook group, you're going to be hearing more about that sooner rather than later. And if you'd like me to come talk to your chapter or talk to your other diabetes organization or your mom's group about the book, which is all about learning from our mistakes, If you listen, you know I've made plenty. Just reach out, go to diabetes-connections.com, click on the community page, and that explains everything. In the meantime, thank you so much to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. And thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.